Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome back to House of Footy. It's your boy Ray, and with me, I've got a full house. Welcome, Mac
Good evening.
and Gio.
What's good, guys?
Today, we'll be going in a very, very deep review of the career of Zlatan Ibrahimovic. Before we get into it, don't forget to follow us on our social medias, both on Twitter and Instagram. Our handle is at @house_of_footy. Also, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe to us. We are on both Spotify and YouTube. And lastly, feel free to get in touch with us via email. We love hearing from you guys, and we want you guys getting involved. Our email is houseoffooty@hotmail.com. But let's get straight into it. Mac, take it on.
Yes, so Zlatan Ibrahimovic. We're going over his kind of career because he most recently retired, kind of having kind of a farewell game, coming up with a speech at AC Milan, very heartfelt, funny moment, maybe even a funny quote, which we might get to later on in the podcast. So lovely to see kind of the fans at AC Milan kind of embrace him, hit the career he's had. He's been a phenomenal player. So we want to spend some time today just to talk about his overarching career, kind of his impact on soccer, and kind of moments we enjoyed watching him as a football player. Or maybe not so enjoyed. I mean, it'll come to my case later on. We'll definitely chat about that fairly soon. But to open it up, first, I want to be able to kind of start off with you, Gio, as a Manchester United fan who had the pleasure of watching him play for your club. Kind of, what are your thoughts on Zlatan and the impact that he had on the beautiful game?
Honestly, I've always been a fan. I love that he has the utmost confidence in himself, and obviously, almost similarly to one of my favorite players, Cristiano Ronaldo, they have that drive to want to excel at any and everything they do, whether it be training, or whether it's late in the game and where it's kind of like dead time for a lot of players. They're always trying to score. They're always trying to do better. So I love that from him. I think he did bring a little bit of that intensity to Manchester United during that time, even though he was a little bit older. Honestly, I can't fault him. He's one of the most physically gifted, athletic players that we've seen don the pitch, and I don't think that can be argued. From his acrobatic goals and just just his physicality. You can't deny it. You've seen it on the pitch, and you've seen it. In slow-mo, he can pretty much play in any league as physical or as technical as each league can get.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. Ray, what about you? Could you kind of view him as kind of a fearsome player that Gio has described, the impact that he's had? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, for sure. Very much like Gio, man, what can he not do? Of course, he, throughout his career, has shown that he is a great technician, great with his feet, numerous goals that we're going to probably cover with him beating multiple defenders, being 6'5" and beating multiple defenders with the ball on the ground, but of course, as well, great in the air, athleticism, can do it all, and link up as well. Plus, on top of that, you can definitely associate free kicks and long shots to him. Those were part of his specialty as well. So, yeah, what could he not do as a number 9? And definitely one of those. And this is very, I guess, synonymous with sort of those. And I guess I'll put it out there. One of those great Serie A strikers, and when you think of those, obviously you got like Del Piero's and of course now Zlatan Ibrahimovic and many more. Those guys will be synonymous with how great they were for that league. And though he did play in multiple leagues and actually won pretty much everywhere he went, he'll definitely be remembered for his time in Italy and those numerous teams that he played for. So yeah, man, let's get into it, Mac.
Absolutely. So I guess I want to be able to toss this to Gio. This is kind of a off the cuff question. CA, what are your thoughts here on this? Is that he was a player that, as you mentioned earlier, he definitely straddled the line of confidence and arrogance. And I think as we look back on him as a player, I think everyone and any soccer fan would agree, any football fan would agree, phenomenal talent, one of the best players we've seen kind of in this generation, but never the best, and never in that conversation, I felt like. Do you feel like, in your opinion, was it because of that? Maybe he straddled the arrogance a little bit too far, or maybe he didn't have, and we'll go into it later, maybe certain career accolades to put him at that level. What do you feel like was missing from him as maybe a football player individual where he wasn't kind of given that spotlight, maybe like the Ronaldos or the Messis, or to be honest, even the Wayne Rooney's in some respects? What do you feel like was missing from him as a player?
I think it has to be the accolades. Obviously, we know what he brings to the table. We know his capabilities at, again, the age that he's already at, and being able to really just, even playing on a torn ACL, he can still, compete with the best of them. So that only goes to show you, the physicality aspect. But I think it really comes down to the accolades. Obviously, he's played for, as many big clubs as you can name. But I think, after his success well, his success even going to Barca and things of that nature, just and like you said, winning everywhere, but not winning the big ones enough. So the Champions League, the league titles, and things of that nature. He won like League Cups, Europa Leagues, things of that nature. He won a lot of like those trophies. But to name, the Champions Leagues, obviously playing for Sweden, it's tough to win a World Cup or a World Cup. Things like that. He lacked a little, but overall, I still think you can't take that away from him. You still have to be good to win. But yeah, those bigger trophies that we're used to seeing, the 5 Champions League for Tony Cruz, Luka Modric, the things of that nature will cement them in footballing history. But I think Zlatan will be cemented in footballing history for different reasons.
Completely fair. I do agree with a lot of the points that you brought up, and I want to twist the question a little bit, and she'll even highlighted on some aspects I want to be able to present to you, right? In a comparison, really, is because I don't want to say misfortune. That's not fair in terms of playing for Sweden, because that when you're playing for kind of a smaller nation like that, it's tough to get let's say the international recognition at the World Tournaments, as the Euros or at the World Cup, where a lot of the spotlight is. Where maybe when you're just kind of playing for PSG, you're not getting the same type of attention, especially prior to when Zlatan was playing there at his peak. But do you think that? I know Holland has just recently won a World Cup. Sorry, has won a Champions League, but similarly, he's playing for Norway. So would you feel like there is a direct comparison between the two of them? Kind of big body strikers, very physical, very acrobatic, but in some ways have the misfortune of playing for, again, I apologize to those nations, but misfortune playing for a smaller footballing nation where you're not going to get that opportunity to shine on the international stage at that level. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's for both of them, I guess. Yeah, not the best environment for them to win internationally, especially given that whether you are playing and these are the most sort of competitive international competitions, I believe, South America and or Europe. Of course, the level of talent and competition that you have will always be difficult, and so like Jim mentioned, the greats. Ronaldo did win at least an international trophy with Portugal. Messi most recently won an international trophy with Argentina, so that definitely separates them. We have a player in our country now in our ranks that we hope will hopefully help us lead into some international trophies, and Alphonso Davies. And so, and that being said, he's in a little bit of a less competitive competition, I guess. But for sure, with these types of players, you're gonna have to compare them based off of what they do in their club, respective clubs, because the chances of, I guess, Holland getting into latter stages of a international competition, I don't see it as much. You definitely have to go with you just give the ball to them and let them and be defensively sound and try to hope that they can drag the team over, which in a lot of cases doesn't really happen. We're going to cover it as well with maybe comparisons to Lewandowski and what he's unfortunately not able to do with his Polish team. So yeah, you're going to definitely compare them based off of what they've done for club, and it's unfortunate, I guess, that their respective countries at the time that they're playing have not been as prepared to win those international trophies.
Completely fair. And now let's get to some more highlights, or in my particular kind of aspect, it may be a low light that I don't like seeing again. But let's start off with you, Gio, and I want to get your idea of what was your favorite time or memorable moment watching Zlatan play. And I want to take out your favorite goal. That's not an option, as well as for you, especially Any Manchester United moment is not acceptable. Okay, we're gonna take out Man U. Is there a particular standout moment for you from Zlatan's career? I guess maybe a particular season or a particular moment aside from a goal that kind of when you first think about him, that kind of calls back to you.
Um, I think it has to be his time spent at PSG. It just showed dominance. It just utter dominance. Although we say, the, League On is a quote unquote farmers league. Just the way he was able to dominate so effortlessly in that league for so long. But I think, with that being said, I think that was one of his downfalls of his career, is spending that much time at PSG. Unfortunately, obviously, the they were probably sold a dream of winning the Champions League. We'll just buy a bunch of players and we'll eventually win the Champions League. But obviously, that blueprint didn't work. But yeah, his dominance, just being able to go out there and just banging goals, him and the rest of them over at PSG, who just collected paychecks. Yeah, I can't say one season in particular, but I also do love his inaugural season for LA Galaxy. I just want to slide that in, that there's really levels to this. There's really levels to this, and for those who watch the MLS, and for all the pundits that who really are expertise in the MLS, and say, these players deserve a shot in Europe, or can compete with the best of them in Europe. I really beg to differ. So yeah, no, those are definitely the key points for Zlatan career in terms of longevity.
No, I can see where you're coming from, because just in the 4 seasons that he played at PSG, he scored a whopping amount of goals. So it's 113 in 122 games. So he walked through the door, destroyed them. And his arrival in 2012 was a year after the club was bought by the Qatari nation. So it was a kind of a straight, oh, okay, we just got this. Zlatan's available. We want him, right? So it was very much a kind of one-to-one transaction where he just walked in and, as you said, dominated that league from day one. Ray, what about you? Is there a particular moment? And I'm going to allow you. You can pick the Manchester United stuff, because I know you may not because of your bias, but I understand if you would or would not. It's up to you. What stands out for you?
Yeah, my again, I guess, against Man U bias will not allow me to pick that. But just on what Gio was talking about, his time in the MLS, where sort of we were able to watch him a little more closely, the types of goals that he scored, and the sort of presence that he commanded. He came over to the MLS when he was over the age of 35, and a lot of players nowadays, of course, you're thinking, oh, they're going over to collect a paycheck. Likely won't play a lot of games. Will do great, score maybe 15, 15 goals a season. He did more than that for sure in his 2 seasons in the MLS, and the type of goals that he scored, even at 36, 37 years old, athletic goals, displaying his athleticism, displaying his technique, being able to lift out defenders, oncoming rushing defenders, and being able to volley those home, definitely stands out, and shows you, the quality that he had, and he still had at that time, in those latter stages of his career. So yeah, those are sort of definitely times that I can remember watching him more closely when he was in the MLS.
Absolutely. And now let's get to those goals that I didn't say you couldn't be able to kind of share, or there's a couple that come to mind for sure. There's a couple dozen, in fact. But what is your favorite all-time Zlatan goal? I'm going to toss it to you first here, Gio.
For me, it has to be the one when he debuted for LA Galaxy. Just the timing of it all. Just the moment it was. Obviously it was subbed on, and then to make a difference, and it was a comeback. At that, and I believe they won that game, right? Off of his goals. So just the moment was kind of almost kind of set for him, and the fact that he showed his class in terms of noticing the keepers off the line, noticing just being physical, coming into the game, and really his self confidence really didn't allow him to do poorly, and again, it really showed. a late stage, a late 30-year-old Zlatan Ibrahimovic can come onto an MLS pitch and instantly turn it on and instantly make an impact. So um, again, it does show the level of footballing. But yeah, that's definitely one of my top goals for Zlatan.
I think just to be able to kind of give you some more ammunition to that goal, to that moment. I think you're talking about his last goal when he actually made his debut, and scored 2 goals, which his team was down, I think 3-2 at the moment. Prior to him coming on for his debut, scored 2 goals. Last one was kind of that volley from distance, I think about 40 yards, up and over the keeper. So absolute class there. Ray, can you please don't make me pick the one that I have to pick here, because I'm going to give mine. But what's your favorite goal from Zlatan?
I'm gonna have to force you to pick the one that you don't want to pick. Unfortunately, I gotta go with the Ajax goal. Of course, the infamous goal where he was in Ajax, and he took the ball sort of it was inside the opponent's half, but he takes on one defender, beats him, goes on to beat 3 other defenders, and the same defender is still there, beats him again, goes around the keeper, and then slots it home. If I remember correctly, the commentator was comparing him to Maradona and Zidane, which really shows you the quality that he had at that sort of early age. He had just moved from Malmo, from Sweden, into Ajax, and though he was becoming one of like the more like a up and coming star in the game, that goal really encapsulates, okay, he's here, that's the quality that he can bring. And of course, moving forward, that's sort of I guess that quality is what sort of made him a target for those Italian teams, and eventually that moved him on. But that definitely, if anything, that's sort of what put him on the map. The first of all, that goal that he scored for Ajax.
So if you were to ask me, that is for sure, without a doubt, my favorite goal. A couple of reasons. One, if you counted out, there's 6 different shot fakes. I think in total, within 5 yards, 9 of the 11 opposing players are within 5 yards of him, with him scoring that goal. So he literally sauced up the entire team. And it just breathes to me like 20, for all those FIFA players out there, like 2017 FIFA, where you just feel like the circle X shot fake over and over and over again until you just cut through the other team and then you bang it in. It's beautiful. It just screams that moment for me. But because Ray picked that, he forces me, and I don't want to, is where I have to pick the goal and have to say my favorite goal, but it's not. It's the one that's remaining, is when he does the overhead bicycle kick against Joe Hart, who tries to header it out. And I think Joe Hart's probably maybe like 5 or 10 yards outside his own box, heads it. The softest header I've ever seen. I don't know why. Like, Harry Maguire is like, let me take notes right now when he sees that. And Zlatan reads the trajectory of it, kind of launches his body, overhead kicks, goes up and over Joe Hart, to then a rushing, if I remember correctly, Gary Cahill is coming to slide in to try to stop it, but it's like he just slides into the back of the net because the ball goes in, and it's absolute shambles. It was, if you ask me about my low point of being kind of an England fan, that was one of the lowest points. We're like, really? Come on. But at the same time, you have to applaud. I think that's probably, because I saw that goal live, probably my favorite goal I've ever seen live, but at the same time kind of stabs me in the heart. You know what I'm saying? It's a catch-22 in that way. I know you both loved me having to say that. What we'll do, though, is we're going to take a little bit of a break. We're going to come back and just go over a couple different things that you need to know, some fun stats that Zlatan has accrued throughout his career, so please do stay with us.
Welcome back to House of Footy, guys. We are going to continue our coverage of Zlatan Ibrahimovic's career, and now Mac's going to start us off with some interesting facts.
Things you need to know. Just going to kind of run off them really quickly here. He played in 773 senior games with 496 goals and 168 assists for club, which are through 22 seasons and 9 different clubs. So he's like Shaquille O'Neal, one of the greats that played for every team, like may as well get across the border here. 82 senior caps for Sweden with 62 goals. That puts him, with those combined goals between club and country, it puts him 12th all time in goals scored for the combined amount. I want to be able to ask both of you, who do you think, and I may have told you this earlier, it might have been kind of a sneaky answer here, who's actually 11th, who's ahead of him by 27 goals? Do either of you have a shout? Let me know if you
Edited
need some
by
hints.
11 goals.
27 goals. 27 goals. Zlatan is 12th all time in goals scored for club and country. This player I'm talking about is 11th ahead of him by 27 goals. Let me know if you need some hints. I can throw some out there.
I mean, I would love a hint to start off because there's a lot of goddamn players out there.
That's very true. He is currently playing. I'm going to go slow. He played for Bayern Munich. Yeah.
Thomas Muller.
No, not even Muller's far off. Good shout though in some ways, but no. Ray, you got one?
I think you met. Was it Lewandowski? We were mentioning his name. It is
before. Lewandowski. Yes, Lewandowski is ahead of. I was very surprised that he has that many goals, but very impressive and something again we may touch on a little bit later. In terms of kind of team accolades that Zlatan Ibrahimovic accrued throughout his career, he's 5-time Italian league champion with 2 different teams, 4-time French league champion, 4-time one-time Spanish league champion, and a Europa League trophy, and over a dozen cup competition trophies through Manchester United, PSG. There's so many different cup competitions. There's not even a point to kind of list through them. He was a 4-time UEFA part of the team of the year as one of the strikers. Of course, one goal I had to talk about earlier, unfortunately, was the 2013 FIFA Puskás Award winner, which again stakes in my heart. But another interesting fact is that he's actually one of 27 players to have played for both Milan teams. Recently, there was an article gone through by planetfootball.com, and it went through and ranked the 27 players that have played for both AC and Inter Milan. I'm going to give you the answer. Zlatan is ranked number 1. But let's just go through the top 5 because like 26, 27, I don't even know who they are. I'll be honest with you. And I'll give you a couple different hints. 2 of them are strikers and 2 of them are midfielders. Gio, just go. Toss out names. Go. Yeah, do you have one?
I'm pretty sure I'm wrong.
I know 2, and of course one of them being his idol, Ronaldo Nazario. That's definitely one of them.
Correct. Ranked number 4 in this article.
Number 4.
Number 4 in this article.
And of course, I think Andrea Pirlo has played for both as well.
Ranked number 3 in this article.
Ooh,
so you're missing 1 striker and 1 midfielder. Okay, let's start off with the midfielder because this is the number 2 ranking. So I think this might be a little bit easier. So he was Dutch, played for the Netherlands. I
think I know who that is.
Go ahead.
Is it Clarence Seedorf?
Correct. Ranked number 2. Now the fifth one. Again, this is a striker. He played for Inter Milan, then AC, and then went back to Inter. So he jumping back and forth. He was one of the few players to have done kind of multiple stints on one of the teams after playing for the other one. He is Argentinian. I would argue he produced his best football actually playing at Chelsea. He reached the Champions League final with Ancelotti's Milan in 04-05 and scored twice.
That would have to be Hernan Crespo.
That is
I
correct.
Remember he was in that team.
One of those are the top 5. So again, the rest of these names we can kind of skip over them. But I thought that was a little bit fun. That was fun. Again, Zlatan was ranked number 1 in the article. Positive for Zlatan. Round of applause for you.
Yeah.
Now let's go to the bad stuff here. This we might have saved this for later, kind of what it's aged the worst, but let's get into it. The whole Barca hating Pep Guardiola, kind of that whole transfer saga. So I want to set the table a little bit, and then we'll see what your guys' thoughts on this. If I remember this correctly, he signed for Barca back in 09, the 09 season. So that was the 08-09 season. The same season, if I remember correctly, that was when the Ronaldo, that was the Benzema. So this very much in some ways was a response to Real Madrid getting those signings that Ibrahimovic was brought over to Barcelona as well. It's kind of be a response where they needed that big name player. That Barca team, if I remember correctly, had just come off winning the Champions League and went ahead and tried to be able to further recruit. Initially throughout the summer, that there wasn't going to be this purchase. There was initial talks, didn't go through. Then when the 2 clubs re-engaged, this was between when he first was initially at Inter Milan and Barcelona, to have an agreement over signing Maxwell, that's the fullback, the wide left fullback, who also signed. Then they re-engaged these conversations which brought Zlatan over. So we all know this is very infamous, where it didn't work between, let's say, I don't know, we're just going to pin it on two people here, between Zlatan and Pep Guardiola. And there has been a lot of quotes coming out from Zlatan saying that Pep Guardiola is not the greatest manager, not a great manager, and really just kind of fortunate to manage the teams that he's managed. Again, those are not direct quotes, but we can very much paraphrase his thoughts and feelings. I guess I want to be able to start off with you, Gio, and I guess this is something I think you might find interesting. Is this very much, I guess, the problem with what Barca has now in more recent times, where kind of in response, they want to be able to sign these big name players, similar to the Neymar situation, where they sold Neymar and just buy to help Messi win, but it didn't work out and there wasn't as much kind of forward thinking going on in that time period. Is this kind of the first failure of this, or maybe whose fault? What stands out for that time period with the world football to you?
Yeah, no, I think they almost, Barca in a sense kind of went away from their roots and really kind of took a page out of Real Madrid's books and kind of bought into that almost that Galacticos type of vibe, and said, let's not get the best player for our team, let's get the best player period on the market right now that we can possibly buy. And at the time, arguably, he was the top striker, very coveted. They know how athletic he is. They know he can bang in goals. He's physical. He'll be a shock to a lot of the Spanish football clubs, because they typically don't play a lot of physical football. I mean, back in the day they did, but again, Spanish is very technical. A lot of passing, a lot of movement. How are we gonna throw other teams off? A guy like Zlatan would fit that build. So they went out and got him, and that doesn't work for every team. They kind of went away from Barca's DNA, Barca's identity, where they grow players, where they pick and choose who they want. And again, that seemed like a weird purchase for Pep. Regardless, he's very choosy and picky of who he brings in, and it kind of showed even his time at City. Bringing in a guy like Ilkay Gundogan, who's not on everybody's short list to be leading that midfield, but he came in and he turned him into a system player that worked out fantastic for him. Now they flip Gundogan, make the money off of him, and is available to do it. And again, now they're able to do it hopefully with Kovacic. But yeah, it just didn't really fit the build at the time for Barca. Really straight away from their DNA. So it was, I think, in general for the footballing world, I think that was a shock buy. Much like Man United does, a lot of shock buys. Does it really fit the team? No. But is it a really big name, and will it drive in revenue? Absolutely.
Right. Same question to you. What are your thoughts in terms of what Gio said? That Zlatan arc, I wouldn't want to say drama arc. I think it might have been a great reality TV show in some ways. That season at Barca. What are your thoughts on that?
So I was reading into this a little bit more, and of course, one of the quotes I have to pick out from his Wikipedia page is when he was asked about how he was used at Barcelona, and he said in response to how Pep had used him, you bought a Ferrari, but you drive it like a Fiat. And so obviously referring to himself as, he has all these skills, all these attributes that you would definitely at that time attribute to, and even now attribute to a world-class striker, but definitely not used to his full potential. And Gio touched on it a little bit. 2008 is sort of that start of when Spain won the Euros, with sort of they're starting to now play that sort of style. And I think if I remember this correctly, just hearing it in other podcasts, Ibra was brought in to sort of be a second option to, if things didn't work out, trying to break teams down through sort of passes and shifting the team around. You can play to him. He's a big target, and you can play off him. But in the end, it didn't work out. And of course, a lot of that being with the clash of sort of the personalities, but also that showed, and because of the dominance that Spain had since that start, and for, you'd say, half a decade later to win obviously the World Cup and the Euros after that as well. It was only going to be one way, and so that, in a sense, was definitely a negative in his career, but also spurred him on to go back to AC Milan, win more there, and even sort of double down for Spain and for that Barca team. That's the way that they wanted to play. But for Ibra, hey, you're still that guy. You can still win wherever you go, and he definitely proved that. So yeah, it was a unfortunate situation for both sides. A shock, like Gio said, when that transfer took place. But I think ultimately both parties were better off, mutually departing.
Yeah, I think this was for me very much a time when you could, because Pep Guardiola was still kind of at the start, I would argue, of his Barcelona reign, but he would go on to find. I think he's a great coach, a great philosophy coach, has great tactics, has an idea if he wants to be able to implement. But if you don't fit his tactics, you're gone, no matter the type of quality of player you have. And Thierry Henry had a quote we're talking about where initially his job was to stay on the left, stay as wide as possible and create space, but he wasn't getting enough touches. So what ended up happening is that even though it was against Pep's role, he came in to try to place a little bit of 1-2s, end up scoring a goal. But at the halftime of that game when he had started, was taken off because he had not followed the instructions. And that very much personality-wise, as a manager, to, I think this is fair to say, very much an ego of Zlatan, deservedly so, but that doesn't mesh. So even though you can be a great coach, you're not a great coach for all players, right? And that mixture didn't make sense. And very much, if you were to ask me who are the biggest Pep Guardiola haters in the world, it's Yaya Toure and then Zlatan Ibrahimovic. And I don't know number 3. There's probably maybe Jose Mourinho, maybe, but I think that's clear 1, 2. If we were to do a draft, that's the first and second pick, in my opinion. Because the only difference is Yaya Toure did witchcraft, right? And Zlatan, we don't know if he did. The reports have not been confirmed on that, but definitely an interesting saga where you can see then immediately once he left, Barca returned to their form, and Zlatan still went to go on to have a fantastic career. But one thing he was missing, and kind of what we read out earlier, was never that Champions League. And on both sides of him being at Barcelona, there was that Champions League title. So if he came a little bit earlier or left a little bit later, he might have had that under his belt as well. But now let's go through just some kind of interesting stats that Zlatan had kind of accrued throughout his career. He led his domestic leagues in goals 5 times, twice in the Serie A and 3 times in PSG. And this is a fun trivia question. I'm very curious. I doubt that you'll get it. I might have to give some hints. That he actually won the Swedish Golden Ball, which was their version of the best player, 11 times from the 2005 to 2016 seasons, only not winning it once in 2006. Who was that player? I'm going to start off with hints right away. So he played in the EPL, that player. He actually played for Arsenal and is most famous for playing in Arsenal. Ray, do you have a guess? You gonna give me a little twitch of excitement there. Do you have a guess? Okay, if not,
the name.
He played as a right midfielder, most famously for Arsenal, was part of the Invincibles. Do we still need more hints?
Huh.
I'm going to toss out an initial for his last name first. L.
Is it P? Oh, it's not. Oh,
it's Larson. Now I can't remember the first name.
It's not.
It's not.
No.
Oh.
Because actually Larson won the 2004, the year before Zlatan won his first one, but there was that gap. His first name started with F as Freddie.
Freddie Ljungberg?
Freddie Ljungberg. That's a name. When I saw that, I was very, very excited.
Back in the days, yeah.
Back in the day, Arsenal winning, those were the days, right? Anyway, and something else I want to talk about I thought was interesting when I was kind of perusing different stats throughout his career is that he led his domestic league 4 different times with penalties made. Meaning this is that he was fouled inside the box the most amount of time in his domestic league. And actually one of the years of those 4, he was first place in top 5 European leagues. And I guess this, I think, might go into kind of our next category here is where it's the size of him, the size, strength, and speed. He was one of the few players where kind of that 2000s football, where kind of that back four line was on top of the 18 the entire time, to which going into, let's say, the mid 2010s when football advanced, the high press, high lines, he was one of the few players to be able to keep pace because he had the athletic ability where, yes, as he got older, he necessarily didn't have the sprint speed, I would say, but he had the intelligence, he had the athletic prowess, probably from all the jiu-jitsu or fighting or whatever that is, but he had the ability to adjust and adapt and still be a dominant player. So as football evolved, he was okay. So I think where he was such a big body, 6'4", 6'5", 225 pounds, where as the game evolved, there's only way to stop him was to foul him in a lot of cases. And he was bigger and stronger than everyone else around him. And funny enough, in terms of him leading those domestic leads, it was later in their career. So as center backs got smaller and faster trying to play a high line, he was still ahead and above, and they had no option but to do that. So I thought that was a fascinating stat and kind of shows how he was still able to be a great player throughout his entire career. So now I guess this might be interesting. I have a fun one, but I'm very curious to see, do either of you or who wants to go first, is where maybe an ideal position, team, system, manager, is there one that screams out to you if you kind of were able to plop Zlatan in a situation and you had kind of a create your own manager mode on FIFA? What does it look like? Who wants to go first here?
I'll
Okay,
very
Gio,
happily go.
Gio,
Within the last, if it was prime Zlatan in the last, say, 4 to 5 years, I say 4 to 5 years, in a Carlo Ancelotti Real Madrid, I think he'd eat food all day. We saw it with Benzema. He is similar to the likes of Mr. Cristiano Ronaldo, so I don't see how he wouldn't dominate in that setting. There are players going to be able to feed him the ball. It's not like Benzema does a lot of defending either. Not like Cristiano Ronaldo does a lot of backtracking either. So yeah, I think that build works for him very well. Balls crossed in from either Luka or Tony, and with his size, he's going to get his head to the ball. So I think if he was on that team, there's a very good chance that one, he could have been a very good backup striker, but who knows if he would have liked that role. But he definitely could have won a lot of trophies in the process.
Ray, what about you? Is there one that stands out to you? I think that's a lovely pick, Joe.
Something you would have enjoyed. I would have enjoyed for sure, but something that the more I read about how Zlatan's career has gone, the more I would have loved to see Zlatan in, and that's of course prime Premier League. And I keep reading about how he got 3 matches banned here, 3 matches banned there, punching an opponent, slapping an opponent, talking shit to a referee. I want to see him prem with my team instead of Fernando Torres. Put the big man Zlatan up there. Xavi Alonso long ball. You got maybe Steven Gerrard playing as a second forward, maybe, or a big man, small man, and he's just playing off. Of course, he's gonna love the physicality of prime Prem. Can he do it on a rainy day in Stoke with that body? Of course he can. And the type of manager that you would have if you have Rafa Benitez at that time as well, who's more so just a man manager because of his big ego. You don't really need to coach him in terms of tactics or technique. Just have someone that, hey, guarantees you minutes. Hey, you are the guy. You can do it when you're on the pitch. Go out there and do it. And that's pretty much it. So I would have loved to see that. And I think he would have enjoyed that too.
I think that's a great pick. Both very personal to you. And now I'm actually going to go. I'm going to pick something for the opponents. I'm going to make the Chelsea fans happy out there, because my thought process is you can look at it one of two ways. A little bit earlier is that it's going to be Chelsea, kind of when Jose Mourinho first takes over Chelsea. Can Zlatan slide right in there instead of Didier Drogba? How much of a kind of a next level do they go to early in their football career? Because at that point, there was very much still a 4-4-2 system, and they struggled to find a player to play alongside Drogba. So initially, if you just replace it and has Zlatan there instead, what does that look like? Maybe you don't need to play those two strikers, and Mourinho may have gone on to win a Champions League with that team. But even if you fast forward a couple years later and you go to the 07-08 season, when that Chelsea team was in its final four, reaches the Champions League final, loses to Pens to Manchester United due to the slip. I think is that the John Terry slip?
Yeah.
He slipped into Wayne Bridges' girlfriend at the time, I think, right? No? Anyway, too soon? Too soon? No, I don't think it's too soon. But my point being is that he easily, instead of Shevchenko, who they spent huge money on, who's an unused substitute for that match, imagine if Zlatan was there, where you have both of those big boys going at that Manchester United back line of Rio Ferdinand and Vidic. I think that's a match for the ages where you might just see the four of them throw hands in the middle of the pitch for no reason, and everyone's okay with it, right? So that's my personal take. Drogba, in fact, actually ended up getting a red card in that game. So I think if you just plop him on that team, either earlier or later, either one works. But again, similar to Ray, where he's in the Premier League in his prime, and maybe the impact he could have had, and maybe he's thought of differently instead of playing, PSG or whatever. Who cares? But yeah, that's what stands out to me. I guess what we'll do now, though, is we've gone a little bit long here. So we're going to take another break. We're going to come back and just go through some funny moments of his career, maybe if, ands, or buts of what could have happened in his career, what changes could happen, and our final thoughts on the career of Zlatan Ibrahimovic. So stay with us.
Welcome back to House of Footy, guys. We are going to finish off today's podcast covering, of course, the career of Zlatan Ibrahimovic. And we're going to start off this section with an intentional comedy moment. And I'm going to start off with my story for Zlatan and pick this from his Wikipedia page. In 2014, Ibrahimovic paid just over $50,000 to send the Swedish national football team for the intellectually disabled to the INAS World Football Championships in Brazil after teammates Johan Elmander, Kim Karlstrom, Andreas Isaksson, and Per Nilsson donated autographed jerseys to be auctioned off for the cause, which Ibrahimovic responded to, "What the hell are you going to do with a shirt? How much is it to go?" So essentially, people and his teammates were auctioning shirts to maybe raise some funds. He said, "You know what? Screw it. Let me just send them and pay for it all myself." Which, to start off, obviously I want to go off of a positive note, because I think you guys have some other moments that may not be as positive for Ibrahimovic, but for sure he has these moments where he's sort of we can paint him in the better picture. So that's my funny story. Of course, he was disappointed with some of his teammates, but at the end, for a good cause. Mac, what's your story?
See, I can just see Zlatan and be like, "What is this? This is so stupid. What are we doing here? What is this?" Like I could just see like his reaction of like, "This is ridiculous. Why are we all wasting our time?" Right? So that's perfect. Zlatan in a positive way. So love to see it. Kind of a story that came out to me, and I think this definitely goes around like the Instagram spheres, like on YouTube Short, stuff like that. That always happens. The story that he had on with Jimmy Fallon. I think Gio, you had that on point, and you gave that to me a little bit earlier, where he sat down and talked about he comes to LA, LeBron's in LA, and generally, a lot of players, they like to give out jerseys and kind of, so it's like, oh, welcome here. So that's not very much the norm in the world of football. So Zlatan receives in the mail a LeBron James jersey saying, "Welcome to LA." Zlatan is like, "Again, what is this? What is this? Okay, I'm going to sign it and send it back to him," because at the end of the day, who's the main star in LA in Zlatan's world? Is Zlatan Ibrahimovic. So Ibra will only do what Ibra does. I'm very curious, though, to see and we have not heard anything since, is about what LeBron James has done with the jersey. I think he might be a little bit offended, because we know he can be a little egotistical, a little bit up, "Hey, I'm the GOAT, I'm the GOAT." No, you're not. But that's not the point. So at the end of the day, kudos to Zlatan for bringing a lovely moment and ingratiating himself in LA for the time that he was there. Guess though, Gio, is that there's 11. Those are some small stories that we've gone over for Zlatan, but he himself is very famous for maybe his one-liners or his quotes, positive and negative. I actually went through a list and think there's like 30 different ones, the 30 biggest quotes or funniest quotes from his career. Is there a particular one that stands out to you from that list?
It might not be on the list. I haven't looked at the list in particular, but this one definitely is always stuck in my head. As soon as you mention Zlatan, this one immediately comes to mind. And just to and just to say, I don't have anything against the MLS. It is a great league. For those who play in it, for those who have the level to play in it, you are a great footballer already. Okay, Now, I believe he was doing an interview with ESPN FC and with I think his name was Hercules. He typically does ESPN FC that covers a lot of Mexico USA matches. Is quite well known in that sense. But he asked him, he asked him about Carlos Vela. What he thought about Carlos Vela. And Zlatan's instant response was, Carlos Vela is how old? In his prime, and he's playing in the MLS. Where was Zlatan in his prime? In Europe. And it just really goes to show, one, his confidence. I can't call it an ego because that's facts. That's facts. If you're in your prime and you want to be at the top of the world in football, it's to be in Europe, and that's the bottom line. And it just goes to show again that there are levels to this. One, he showed it in his first game, and for him to do it, to have that interview pre-game and then go out to the game, come on, score 2 goals to put your team up, and to win it against Carlos Vela's team, that's peak. That's peak. You as a LAFC fan, what are you really gonna say to that? He came out here onto your pitch and beat you. So that's just, in my eyes, that will always be a goated moment for Zlatan.
So
and one of my favorite quotes.
Because that moment they were talking about the interviewers going around as who's the best player in the MLS, and he scoffed at the idea it was Vela. The funny part is that everybody else on his team, in all likelihood, is younger than him. So now he's literally shitting on his entire team and doesn't care. He's like, oh, you guys are playing at your best. You're playing here. Oh, you guys are all trash. When I was good, I was over there. What are y'all doing, right? So he has the arrogance to say that. It's like, yeah, of course I'm better than this Carlos Vela person, as well as trashing on everyone else in all actuality in the league and his team, who he has to go play with very shortly. So that's always a goated story for him, for sure. What about you, Ray? Was there a particular quote or story, that other story that stands out to you that you want to be able to talk about?
Yes. One that comes to mind is, of course, one of his many MLS goals for LA Galaxy when he scored against Toronto FC. Ridiculous. I don't even know how, spinning heel kick. He put it past the TFC goalie, and I think in that moment he scored his 500th professional career goal. And when he was asked about it, he said, happy for Toronto because they will be remembered as my 500th victim, which particularly stings because we are based in Toronto. And I do remember that goal. We were, of course, facing Zlatan, and then he even at that age was able to score those types of goals. And you just have to give it up to him. So yeah, that's one of my favorite quotes from him.
So I'm love the quote. Definitely pure Zlatan. So I'm just going to quick fire through a couple ones that kind of really stood out to me. There's an exchange with him with a reporter ahead of the 2014 World Cup qualifying playoffs. And Zlatan quoted saying, only God knows who will go through. Reporters says it's hard to ask him, to which Zlatan replies, you're talking to him. So again, kind of shows Zlatan the type of player he is. In regards to another one that kind of stood out to me was his, I think it was when he was going over to Manchester, and there's talk about him becoming the king of Manchester while he was playing for United. And Cantona's like, no, he's going to be the prince. To which then Zlatan comes back and says, I won't be the king. I'll be the god of Manchester, right? Just showing that there's level to this, to a Manchester United legend himself. And then, of course, as only Zlatan can do, to tie off his career in his farewell speech to fans that are booing him, he says, keep booing. This is the biggest moment in your year seeing me. Just he knows the perfect thing to say in the moment. And that's just Zlatan. So lovely to see that. So those are some funny moments throughout his career. Now, to move on to a different topic where different sliding doors. What this means is that if, let's say, one thing were to change throughout an aspect of his career, how would we look at him differently, or how his career could have potentially played out differently from that small tweak? One that stands out to me and I think is very interesting and kind of touches on to what I mentioned earlier about his international career is that he actually could have played for Croatia instead of Sweden. As the reason why he chose, he was born in Sweden, but I think his parent, on his father's side, was half Croatian, so he could have played for Croatia. Chose not to do it, chose to play for the country that he was born in instead. But what comes to mind for me is two different World Cup runs that he could have had. He could have had the 2018 World Cup when he would have been 36, so he would have been towards maybe the tailor end of his peak, but still a great footballer with a prime Modric, prime Rakitic, both kind of killing it. Or even back 4 years earlier in 2014, at that point, Modric would have been 28, Rakitic would have been 26. For those both runs, the striker for those teams was Mandzukic, which, again, if you take out Mandzukic for Ibrahimovic, you definitely have an Improvement, if I were to use that. So again, it's Zlatan. It's just the one that's one small tweak. What could have been very much, and I know I'm going to pander to myself here. Haaland could have played for England. What are we doing here, bro? What are we doing here? Why you do this? Why? And again, great for him to support the country that he wants to play for, but what could have been, right? Is there, a moment for Zlatan's career as like a what if, a sliding door that stands out to either one of you, kind of open up on your end?
Yeah,
I
go ahead, Joe.
I mean, for me, it's had he not spent that time, I think withering his career away at PSG. I don't think those years were used right, or used well. Obviously, he bagged a lot of goals, like the stats you mentioned earlier. But did it do his career justice? Winning obviously the French league. Yes, it is winning, but do those trophies mean much to him, and do they mean much to the general consensus to, of footballing fans? I don't think so. I think he could have won, either went back to Italy a little earlier, won, or tried his hand at the Prem a little earlier. There's definitely teams looking for strikers, and I think he could have been a fantastic one in the Prem, whether it been for Ray's Liverpool or my Manchester United. I think he could have been a great fit for either team early on in his career, and probably could have done a lot more damage, and maybe competed for some more prestigious titles.
That's right. What about you, Ray?
Okay, so I have actually, just because Gio actually laid it perfectly, two scenarios. One I won't get into as much. If so, he made his move to PSG, I believe, in 2012, and I think that's the same year that Robin van Persie made his move from Arsenal to Man U. And if that didn't happen, teams involved are, of course, Max Arsenal and Gio's Man U. If that didn't happen, maybe Van Persie would have stayed. Would not be, the would not have that blemish in his career that some Arsenal fans might attribute with him. And of course, he would have been in the Prem earlier than when he actually eventually went to Man U. Gio, what are your thoughts about that?
Wouldn't be me personally wouldn't call it a blemish, since he did go on to win a Premier League title. But who's to say? Tit for tat, whatever.
I'm just saying.
He said, she said.
Next, continue.
Okay. Next, continue. Go ahead.
So on that note, Gio mentioned it. What if he went to the Premier League a little earlier? 2009 was the year that the summer of 2009 is the year that he made his move from Inter Milan to. Sorry, was it Inter? Yeah, it was Inter, because he moved from Juventus to Inter to Barcelona. Of course, we talked about it earlier in the podcast. It didn't turn out that great. 2009, 2010 is also the second season, if I remember correctly, of the Abu Dhabi United group purchasing Manchester City. And the two signings that they made that summer were Carlos Tevez and Emmanuel Adebayor, both from Manchester United and Arsenal, around 25 million pounds at the time. Similar fee was paid for him by Barcelona in that time, and of course we know it was not the greatest time. And if he went to Man City in that project, similar to sort of what he did for PSG, he's in the Prem earlier, in a league that sort of, I think, fits his sort of physical build, and he would have enjoyed. And of course, one of the figures, because Adebayor and Carlos Tevez had short stints at Man City, though they did quite well there. I think Zlatan would have had a longer stint there. I think he would have been late 20s in his prime, and definitely would have helped that project along. What are your guys' thought about that one?
I love that one for the Man City one, because you could see him and Aguero playing off each other very, very well in a big man, small man 4-4-2 lineup, which was kind of the formation du jour back at that time period. Maybe, but then how did those two careers play out? Does Aguero still have the same type of impact? That might be a little bit different. So, lovely to see.
Yeah, man. I just thought it would be fun to throw that one in. Eventually, obviously, all roads lead back to the Premier League. Just would have wanted to see him
absolutely
in his prime more so, rather than sort of towards his end of his career there. But that's pretty much for sliding doors, Mac. I guess let's move on to what's
age the best. What for you and his individual career? For me, honestly, it's really much a weird thing because he's played for so many different teams. He's had this impact across so many different leagues and individual managers. What really stands out for me is kind of his relationship with Mourinho, even though did he actually even ever play for Mourinho for any time period? Maybe for the short time period at Manchester United, right? But aside from that, because his talk was always very much positive I would say it's not debate now, but like 5-6 years ago in the debate of Mourinho versus Pep, obviously with his hate of Pep, which is also what aged the worst in some ways, but what aged the best is that he was very much a Mourinho stan and loved kind of the idea of working with him, loved how he managed his teams, the passion that he coached with. So for me, that's one thing that aged the best. That's all I got. I'll be honest with you. It's not too many positive things for me in terms of individual moments or teams. Because again, it's not like he won a Champions League. There was never like that huge moment, you know? What about either for you? Does anything stand out?
So I do have one, and that's going to go back to sort of the quotes. And of course, when he was asked about his move to League in 2012, he said, "It's true. I don't know much about the players here, but they definitely know who I am." And of course, Zlatan went on to put PSG on the map immediately in this first season, won the league. I think by the time he left, he became PSG's top goal scorer in all time. And you can definitely think that's been a highlight for his and also more recently PSG's career, sort of hand in hand for his sort of best goal return in a team. And as well, the current PSG that we know now was definitely brought on and moved to this stage where they're at now by Zlatan and him sort of dominating the league, winning, I think, all 3 titles when he was there. And so that's really what's aged the best for me.
What about you, Gio? Anything that stands out?
Yeah, no, I think it comes in the later half of his career. Actually, the last couple of years actually is when he won the Scudetto with AC Milan. I think that was just, if he retired at that point, that would be a fantastic send off. Maybe not having to lead to this year, but I think for him to go back, obviously having history with the club, having history with Milan in general, for him to, at that age, to still contribute the way he contributed, the way he's able to lead, obviously playing through, and like how much it meant to him playing through, the ACL injury. I think, obviously shows, we all know him for his arrogance, but we all need to see him in a different light, and that's, the ultimate hard worker and the ultimate contributor, sacrifice that this guy has put in. Obviously choosing to play for like a nation like Sweden, who isn't the most decorated national team, passing up the opportunity to play for Croatia, just that will to push on and to achieve great things. I think that's definitely something that has always stuck with me, and that was definitely one of the moments that will stick with me for a very long time.
Lovely to hear that. But now we went positive. Let's go negative. What's aged the worst for me? Again, it's that relationship with Pep Guardiola. I know it was made him great, but if he didn't have that arrogance where he could have fit into that Barcelona team, but needed to go over there, that could have been special. That could have been, you're talking about arguably the best player of all time, Messi, alongside arguably at that moment, the best striker in the world. If they're able to figure out that 1-2 punch in one way or of another, there were moments where there still did see some positives. Like I think one game that stands out to me is Zlatan was missing a lot of chances. He was getting booed by a lot of the Camp Nou fans there. Goes on to Messi, I think at that moment had 2 goals. They go on to get the penalty, and Messi lets Zlatan take it to score, right? Where you did see there was a kind of an embracement from some of the players there, but it wasn't enough. Unfortunately, I feel like that did age the worst because I think his career could have gone a whole different trajectory if there was a way to make that work for me. With, of course, the cards, they're not looking at alternative options. So even though, again, for me, that's what aged the worst. What about for you, Ray?
Yeah. I just want to quickly mention, yeah, that would have been crazy. The hottest player joining one of the most upcoming one of the best upcoming managers, and the team that just won the Champions League would have been crazy. But one of the one of the moments for me that's aged the worst is in 2019. He purchased a 23.5 stake in his Stockholm-based club Hammarby, who were the rivals of his boyhood team, Malmo. And of course, in a statement, he expresses admiration for the club and his fans, and saying that he was excited for the opportunity to support one of the most interesting and influential clubs in Sweden, which those Malmo fans took to offense and eventually vandalized his statue and set it ablaze. And so, yeah, you will always make enemies if you do that. So that's definitely one of the things that aged the worst for me.
And then for myself, just his just throughout his career, just obviously we know how strong he is and how scrappy he is. Just the little dirty plays that kind of makes him look like a very dirty player. Obviously I mentioned to you guys, the accidental step to the head, little things like that, little slaps to the face that really just makes him look like a bigger douchebag than he really is. It seems like for any club he's been to, seeing the videos from his time spent at Man United, he's very loved. He's very loved. There's a lot of laughs like in the dressing room, so I can't think of him as a bad guy, but just the antics he does on the pitch, the little things that doesn't create a great image for the fans. I think will always kind of make people second guess where they rank him, because all those things do matter, and that will definitely keep him lower on the rankings of the all time lists. But yeah, sucks to have to think of him in that kind of light.
Quick thought here that came up at spur of the moment. Do you think, in terms of antic wise, is he, again, not player ability wise, but antics in terms of accidentally stepping on players, accidentally hitting players, doing things? Do you think he is soccer's version of Draymond in some ways, Draymond Green from basketball, where accidentally stepping on Sabonis, accidentally kicking 17 people in the groin in one playoff run, accidentally. It's you very much have a little bit to those side aggression. Again, that was just a fun thought that I had at the moment, but let's wrap up the podcast. We have a couple more segments here to be able to cover. So one we've been saving here and we're touching on is kind of the rankings of strikers potentially. I know we've done a review of players such as Robin van Persie, Luis Suarez, Sergio Aguero. We've been very striker focused there. I would argue Zlatan Ibrahimovic, if you would ask me, are above all of them in terms of being kind of at the peak, who may be the best. And in terms of goal scorer, you have the numbers to be able to back it up with him being 12th all time. But as we talked about it earlier, we hinted earlier, Lewandowski's 11th. So I want to ask both of you, which player you got? If you're in charge, who would you rather take? Is Lewandowski the better striker, or is Zlatan Ibrahimovic the better striker? You can maybe go at peak, career totality, however you want to phrase your argument. We'll see who you got. Who you got, Ray?
Ooh, it's tough. It's tough because we just talked about Zlatan, and I'm trying to lean towards him longevity wise as well. I think one of the only players to score in across 4 decades. That really speaks for itself as well. Unfortunately, though, I'm going to have to take Lewandowski slightly just because I think he is overall just a ruthless finisher. Though Ibra, box office for the entertainment and for that sort of you pay to watch. That's definitely who I would sort of pay to watch. But in terms of just raw scoring ability up front, I think I would take Lewandowski, just edging it. What do you think, Joe?
I was thinking Lewandowski as well. Simply the fact that you don't have to manage a player like Lewandowski. But a guy like Zlatan, obviously, we know that ego of his has a mind of its own. But you know, the good come with the bad. So I think in terms of a threat wise, again, his strength, being able to hold up the ball, being able to win aerial threats. I think building a team around that type of striker, like along with his technicality with his feet, it's hard to pass up. But I would actually side with Zlatan. I would take the good with the bad and add that extra layer of depth and threat on the pitch, given his physical ability.
Interesting. I love how you kind of left the split decision here. So for me, I'm going to look at it a little bit differently. If I'm a teammate, if I'm a player on the team, I'd rather play with Lewandowski because he might pass me the ball. That would be nice. However, if I'm the owner of the club, I'm picking Zlatan because even though he's going to create me more problems, he's going to create me, as you kind of highlighted there, Gio, more box office, more moments, and I would argue the higher peak. But Lewandowski, I would say, if you would average out his career, probably has more of a consistent output versus Zlatan does have those peaks and valleys. And I would argue Lewandowski did play at a higher level for longer because there was that time period of going to MLS. He said it's not a great league, and then coming back to AC Milan where he really wasn't a consistent presence there. Whereas Lewandowski went Dortmund, Bayern, and then of course the Barca. I understand they played in the Europa League, so maybe that's still not a great level of competition. But you take what you can get there. So again, I think it's very, very close between the two. It just depends who I am, who I'll take. But to finally wrap this up, we're just going to go to kind of your firm answer, your final thoughts. Zlatan Ibrahimovic, looking back in his career, is he overrated, underrated, properly rated? I've gone to Ray first a couple times here, so I'm going to go to you, Gio. What are your thoughts?
I believe the man, the myth, the legend, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, the god himself, is perfectly rated. I think there are players that have brought more to the table, but there are a lot of players that you have to put him above, just given his God-given talent. So no, I think he's a very hard worker in that sense. But yeah, I think he's perfectly rated.
Ray?
I have to agree with Gio there. You definitely think of one of the best strikers that we've seen based on sort of that return and what he's been able to do. But also, you gotta, when you think about him, you'll also think about some of those not so bright moments. And so, that being said, and that sort of deters some people from ranking him as one of sort of like the top 5 strikers of all time. And so, I think he's fairly rated for that reason.
Hot take. I'm going to stand with Zlatan Ibrahimovic this year. And if you would ask him, he would say he's underrated. And I, of course, have to agree with Zlatan. Because, as he said earlier, he is God. How do you disagree with him? You can only much wiggle room there. But for me, I think, because again, if we were to sit down and have the conversation about who was the best striker at that moment, I feel like his name isn't the first one with the bullet brought up. We've talked about Suarez. We talked about, was he the best striker in the world at one point? Yes. Benzema's been the best striker in the world at one point. Yes. Lewandowski's been the best striker of the world at one point. Yes. I think those are clear. But in those conversations, because I would argue of playing first in Serie A, which at that point, it was probably the most competitive league in the world, initially dropped off, then going to PSG. Because of his situation, he wasn't put into that conversation. So is that partially his fault? But that's why I feel like he's slightly underrated, because I feel like he's sometimes put behind those players, where in some cases he should be at the level, if not above, some of those other players. So I think I'm going to go with slightly underrated there. But again, if you'd ask Zlatan, he's the GOAT. He's the greatest of all time. Or who is Ronaldo? I'm better, right? So it is what it is. So lovely to see. That's kind of wraps up our podcast. Ray, do you want to kind of take us out here?
Exactly. So this concludes our podcast for today. If you like what you heard, please like and subscribe to us on our social medias. That's at @houseup_footy. If you have any comments, suggestions, or general banter, get in touch with us via email as well, houseoffooty@hotmail.com. The next time you hear from us will be next Friday, when we will be reviewing the Welcome to Wrexham Season 1, I guess part 1 of the Season 1 of a 2-part series. But on that note, thank you, Mac.
Just want to let you know, on his ex-girlfriend's engagement gift, Zlatan said, "What do you mean present? She got Zlatan."
That's very on brand for Zlatan. Thank you, Gio.
Take care, guys.
And thank you, Zlatan.